Let's break down the many issues of this shooting in Dallas, Texas by 25-year-old black man Micah Xavier Johnson. Let me speak completely clearly to you. Yes, this was a racist hate crime by a black man against whites. Some on the right seem to think that the left hesitates to call something a hate crime or terrorism. A hate crime when it's Muslims. Terrorism when it's Muslims, or a hate crime when white people are the victims. In the world of some liberals, supposedly blacks can never be racist or the perpetrators of racist hate crimes. If that's true, then that's shameful. But for me, it is very, very clear. A hate crime, as I will show you here, a hate crime is, and we have the definition for you that we will put up, a hate crime is a crime motivated by racial, sexual, or other prejudice, typically one involving violence. As we heard multiple times now, Lewis, the suspect said he wanted to kill white people, specifically white police officers. Case closed, right? Whatever else this qualifies as, this is a hate crime. It is a racist hate crime by a black guy against white people, period. And, for all the accusations about the left hesitates to say that, that may be true. I don't watch enough so-called left media to know, maybe, but I have no qualms about saying that whatsoever.
I also wouldn't have a problem putting this in the category of domestic terrorism either.
Right.
Yeah, because the two are not mutually exclusive. So, I mean, yes, I think we can also call it that.
Well, a number of tweets popped up after these horrible, vile acts, people saying this guy is a martyr. Micah Xavier Johnson is a hero or a freedom fighter. He was doing what needed to be done. Bakari Sellers, who was on with us last week, said it on CNN. I've been saying it all weekend. No matter what legitimate issues need to be addressed with regard to police use of force, bias in policing, whatever, Micah Johnson is not a martyr. He is not a hero. Everyone tweeting and applauding him should be ashamed of themselves. And it is terrorism, as Lewis said. Terrorism, the use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. Clearly, this was an individual who was upset about some of the political issues in the country that we have discussed. There can never be apologetics for hate crimes. There can never be apologia for terrorism, period. Full stop. I don't know how else to say it, Lewis. Can I be any clearer this evening?
No, it's you got to look at the bigger picture. I mean, is this act going to make police officers realize that there could be much more severe consequences for their actions? Maybe, but at the same time, you're also probably giving every police officer in this country an even itchier trigger finger, making them more afraid, making them more paranoid.
The fear policing, which is what much of the problem connects to, right? Not so much overt racial bias, but fear in policing that is racially tinged. That's going to escalate because of this, and we'll talk later about President Obama's statements on that. Now, this is not just a racial hate crime and domestic terrorism. It is also a gun safety issue, and it illuminates some pretty glaring problems with gun safety regulations. You do not need a state permit in Texas to purchase firearms, and you are not required to register them with the state either. And there's a new Texas law, Lewis, that went into effect in January, which allows residents to openly carry handguns without an open carry permit. In other words, you have a concealed weapon permit, you can open carry. Do you realize that this means if you have a handgun and no open carry permit, you can walk around in public with a gun displayed, ready to commit a crime, on your way to commit a crime, and there's nothing police can do because it is legal?
Yeah, and let's not forget about that other Texas law that happened recently where you can carry a concealed pistol on campuses.
Right.
There's also that. And yes, if this guy, handguns aside, I mean, if this guy didn't have access to such a lethal weapon,
right,
perhaps things might have ended a little differently.
Well, what's fascinating and horrifying is that there was actually a man who was at this protest as an open carry demonstrator who was detained by police for a while in the midst of this chaos. This is not someone who was even involved in the shooting. But these are police resources that at a time when we should have been going after the bad guy with the gun, and I know that it's sort of cliche to even say that this was a good guy with a gun, but it was at least a guy with a gun not involved in this crime. A neutral guy with a gun. Police resources were focused on that guy instead. And lastly, in Texas, you can also carry around long guns, rifles and shotguns They don't even have to be concealed as long as you're not doing it in a way that is, quote, calculated to cause alarm. Tell me a more subjective definition than calculated to cause alarm. So you can walk around with a rifle, Lewis, and as long as it's not, quote, calculated to cause alarm, you can walk right up to wherever you're going to shoot people because you're not doing anything against the law. And this is all part of the problem. The difficulty of identifying good and bad guys with guns and the fact that more guns in more places very clearly doesn't help.
Yeah. It's I saw this a lot in Texas. You know, I working downtown. I mean, I would see the demonstrations and people with the guns, and it's clear what's happening when there's a big demonstration. But when it's one person walking around, I mean, what are you really going to do with that rifle in downtown Austin, walking around door to door in the streets? I mean, I wish we could live in a place where it's understood that that person is up to no good instead of someone just deciding that they want to carry a gun around because they can.
Send me your thoughts on Twitter about this. I'm on Twitter at @Pakman. Lewis is on Twitter at @LewisMotamedy. Much more coverage about this coming up. I've talked about how people of all ages, but particularly millennials, are owning cars less and participating more in the sharing economy. And one of the more popular options is Zipcar, which gets you a car when you want it, when you need it. They offer all sorts of cars, SUVs, hybrids, whatever you need. It includes insurance and it includes gas. You just pay for the time that you actually use the car. And you can reserve the car online from your smartphone over the phone. Then you unlock it with your Zip card. Each car share member reduces their personal CO2 emissions by between 1,100 and 1,600 pounds per year. For our audience, Zipcar is offering $25 of free driving credit if you sign up at joinzipcar.com/David. Support our show, reduce your carbon emissions and your spending on cars. Sign up at joinzipcar.com/David.